Have you ever stopped to wonder, what if everything they taught you about miracles was wrong? A powerful organization like NASA secretly summoned 24 religious leaders from around the world. That wasn't a coincidence. They wanted to know what happens to faith when the aliens finally show up. Why does the Vatican have a telescope called LUCIFER? Why do so many biblical angels resemble modern UFO sightings? And here's the terrifying part. Why doesn't anyone want you to know this? What you'll see in this video isn't theory. It's the testimony of someone who was there, of someone who heard inside the church the whisper of something not human. Could miracles actually be misunderstood alien technology? Or is there an even deeper truth that's being hidden from you? When NASA quietly brought together 24 religious leaders, priests, pastors, imams, and rabbis, for an unusual mission, few realized the real weight of this move. The goal? To understand how people around the world would react if it was officially announced that we are not alone. But why bring in theologians? Because deep down, religion shapes how we process the unknown, and few things spark more fear and fascination than contact with a UFO. Imagine explaining aliens during a Sunday sermon. Not so easy, is it? But think about this. Why would a space agency care so much about people's faith, to the point of launching a confidential project with spiritual leaders? It's as if they already knew that revealing aliens would shake more than beliefs. It would shake entire structures of meaning. One rabbi involved in the study said that many biblical stories could be reinterpreted in the light of extraterrestrial contact. And that's where it gets controversial. What if what we call angels were actually aliens visiting Earth in ancient times? What if contact isn't new, but just the next chapter of a story that's been hidden for ages? By gathering theologians, NASA may have taken the first step in preparing humanity, spiritually, for a revelation that's long overdue. Maybe those UFOs in the sky aren't just machines, maybe they're messengers. But the question still echoes in these religious circles: what happens to faith when a miracle takes shape and it's not human? Andrew Davison isn't your average theologian. A respected scholar at Cambridge, he was one of the 24 chosen by NASA to explore a topic still considered taboo: how faith would respond to the confirmation of extraterrestrial life. According to him, most religions already contain, quietly, space for the mysterious, the unknown, the unexplainable. And that's when he realized a startling truth. Maybe accepting aliens is easier for the faithful than for the skeptics. Davison shared that many spiritual leaders believe the idea of beings from other worlds doesn't contradict Scripture. It expands the divine. He pointed to biblical passages that speak of beings descending from the heavens, shining lights, chariots of fire, elements that, with a new lens, sound a lot like UFO encounters. And it's not crazy to think that way. If faith teaches anything, it's that the universe is vast and full of secrets. What changes is the vocabulary: miracle or technology, divine messenger or interplanetary visitor. And here's what hit hardest. Davison says Scripture already leaves room for God's creations beyond Earth, other conscious civilizations scattered throughout the cosmos. The problem was never faith. The problem is losing control of the narrative. Because if aliens are real, and UFOs have been visiting us for ages, what else do we have to rewrite? Since ancient times, humanity has described encounters with glowing beings, voices from the sky, and entities beyond explanation. But what if those angels appearing in radiant light, delivering cryptic messages, weren't spiritual at all? What if they were aliens? Some scholars argue that what we call religious experiences may actually be contact events, filtered through the lens of limited understanding. Imagine a UFO appearing to an isolated village centuries ago. How would they describe it? As a miracle, of course. Some suggest that even events like the Marian apparitions in Fatima, Portugal, or Guadalupe, Mexico, might resemble alien encounters more than divine visions. Flashing lights, telepathic messages, atmospheric changes, they all mirror modern accounts of alien contact. This isn't about mocking anyone's faith. It's about asking, what if we've been using different words for the same phenomenon? And here's the boldest idea. Maybe the spirits that heal, the angels that guide, and even the demons that torment are manifestations of the same presence, viewed from different cultural angles. Maybe UFOs were the real stars of countless miracles, just wearing a different costume. So, how many sacred events are still waiting to be reinterpreted? Among all world religions, few are as daring or controversial as Raelianism. Founded by Claude Vorilhon, known as Rael, the movement teaches that everything we call miracle, from the parting of the Red Sea to resurrection, was the work of a highly advanced extraterrestrial species, the Elohim. According to Raelians, these events were misunderstood acts of alien technology. Sounds absurd? Maybe. But the movement has tens of thousands of followers worldwide. Raelians believe aliens created life on Earth using genetic engineering and have guided humanity ever since through appearances, messages, and even environmental manipulation. They claim that angels, flaming chariots, and gods from the sky were simply UFOs interacting with ancient humans. Rather than rejecting spirituality, Raelians reinterpret it. Faith and science walk hand in hand. In their view, sacred texts are misunderstood records of extraterrestrial encounters. And the boldest part, they're not hiding. Raelians have built an embassy to welcome the Elohim and call on humanity to prepare for their return. Is it a cult, a visionary movement, or are they simply connecting the dots others refuse to see? Because if Rael is right, we'll have to rewrite our entire history. The Vatican, one of the oldest and most influential institutions in the world, remains mysteriously silent on the topic of UFOs and aliens. For centuries, the Church has spoken on nearly every subject: science, politics, morality. Yet when it comes to mysterious objects in the sky, or claims that angels may be extraterrestrials, there's a strange hush. Why? Could it be fear of losing narrative control, or hidden knowledge not meant for the public? Ironically, the Vatican owns one of the most advanced observatories in the world, the Vatican Observatory. It even employs scientists who've openly stated that aliens don't contradict faith. And yet, no official comment on the growing global reports of UFOs or military documents being leaked. For an institution that speaks constantly about miracles, their silence on modern ones is deafening. Some believe the Vatican knows far more than it admits, that it has secret records of encounters, artifacts, even physical proof. Others argue high-ranking church figures have known the truth for centuries, but buried it to preserve spiritual order. But what if the silence isn't neglect, but a warning of what's coming? Now here's something wild. The Vatican doesn't just have an observatory. It cooperates a telescope called LUCIFER. Yes, that's the actual name. It's a powerful infrared telescope, built in partnership with American and German scientists, stationed on Mount Graham in Arizona, a site considered sacred by local native tribes and shrouded in ancient legends of star beings. Makes you wonder, why would the Church be scanning the skies from a mountain full of celestial myths? LUCIFER was designed to observe distant galaxies and potentially habitable exoplanets. In other words, it's searching for other worlds that could host life. But why is the Vatican involved in this hunt? Could they already suspect aliens are real, or perhaps be monitoring them through unidentified flying objects orbiting our planet? They say it's science, but what if it's also spiritual reconnaissance? The name Lucifer raises even more eyebrows. Some say it's symbolic, a nod to a forbidden truth humanity isn't ready for. Others believe it's a signal that we're nearing a revelation that could merge faith and extraterrestrial reality. So, is the Vatican watching the stars out of curiosity, or keeping an eye on something they already know is out there? Imagine this: the parting of the Red Sea, the Star of Bethlehem, the voice from heaven during Jesus' baptism. Not miracles, but technological phenomena. Arthur C. Clarke once said, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." What if UFOs were present during these biblical events, and we've simply lacked the language to describe them properly? Reading scripture through this lens may sound heretical to some, but liberating to others. Why would God's power be limited to Earth alone? If aliens were the intermediaries, or even the engineers, of creation, maybe that expands our faith rather than breaks it. Maybe God isn't a man in the sky, but a force working through beings from across the cosmos. And this changes everything. How would religious leaders react if they learned aliens performed acts long considered divine? Could institutions survive such a shift? Perhaps the reason these truths remain hidden is because most people aren't spiritually or emotionally ready to face them. Yet, ever notice how every time solid UFO evidence surfaces, it's quickly debunked, erased, or made to look ridiculous? That's not by accident. Governments and religious institutions alike fear the chaos that truth could unleash. The day the public fully accepts that aliens exist, and we are not in control, is the day the foundation of order begins to shake. So controlling the narrative has become a survival mechanism. For governments, admitting we're being visited by something superior is admitting weakness. For religions, it's a threat to long-standing doctrines. They fear losing their grip on the truth. Because if an alien species lands and says, "We've guided you for millennia," how do centuries of sacred teachings hold up? Panic would spread faster than faith. That's why ridicule, denial, and silence are their weapons. But for how much longer? More evidence leaks every year. Whistleblowers speak out. The truth seeps through the cracks. And when it finally erupts, no one will be able to say, "I didn't know." In nearly every ancient culture, there are stories of beings descending from the sky to teach, warn, or intervene. Deities delivering laws, mysterious lights preventing disasters, divine dreams changing history. What if those were all alien encounters, not religious myths? Some believe UFOs have been guiding us all along, altering our path in subtle ways without us realizing. Think about major historical moments. Inventions sparked by sudden inspiration. Wars mysteriously avoided. Scientists claiming ideas came in a dream. Could these be examples of alien interference, steering our evolution from behind the curtain? Instead of invading, maybe they mentor. If that's true, then prophets, saints, and visionaries might just be humans sensitive to that contact. They didn't have the term extraterrestrial. They had miracle, vision, revelation. So maybe Earth's story wasn't written by humans alone. Now imagine this. You've spent your whole life believing miracles were acts of God, and suddenly you find out they might have been aliens using advanced tech. For some, it would be a crisis. For others, a breakthrough. Because deep down, we're all looking for meaning. And maybe UFOs are just the next step in that search. Psychologists say such a revelation could trigger emotional collapse in some, but could also open the mind to something bigger, expanded consciousness. Maybe faith doesn't need to disappear, just evolve. Maybe God never had one form, but many. And aliens could be part of that divine system. So what if the so-called gods of the past weren't metaphorical, but literal visitors from other star systems? Then suddenly, faith and science aren't enemies. They're puzzle pieces, ready to be reconnected. Not all faith is built the same. Some believers interpret their spirituality symbolically, open to mystery. Others cling to literalism. Any contradiction is seen as a threat. So if aliens show up and UFOs become undeniable, some people will adapt easily, while others may break. There's a psychological term for this: cognitive dissonance. When new truth contradicts a core belief, the mind fights back. Even if evidence of aliens piles up, people will reject it. Not because it's false, but because it's uncomfortable. We'd rather defend lies than surrender control. That's why a global alien revelation wouldn't be felt equally. Some would say, "Finally the truth." Others would spiral. Maybe that's why the truth's been slowly leaked. Because it's not just about aliens. It's about our fear of being wrong. Today's kids live in a world where the impossible is normal. They see aliens in cartoons, fly spaceships in games, and talk to AI without blinking. For them, aliens aren't strange. They're logical. Unlike adults raised in rigid systems, children's minds are flexible. When a UFO appears on the news, they don't panic. They ask, "So what?" This generation might be the key to our future. They don't fear the unknown. They're curious about it. They don't demand ready-made answers. They explore. Maybe that's what we've been missing. A fearless desire to ask bigger questions. Some believe that if official disclosure happens, the young will adapt fastest. Maybe that's why aliens haven't revealed themselves yet. They're waiting for the right generation, one ready to listen. Have you noticed how aliens are everywhere in pop culture? And it barely surprises anyone now. Films like Arrival, Interstellar, E.T., and even Marvel blockbusters have conditioned us to view extraterrestrials as familiar, even friendly. Researchers believe this isn't random. It's psychological conditioning, a slow mental rehearsal. Repetition removes fear. Show aliens enough times, and they stop being monsters. Start portraying them as wise, peaceful, and advanced, and people stop panicking. Books like Chariots of the Gods have circulated these ideas for decades. Maybe entertainment isn't just storytelling, but training. Media shapes perception. And if contact happens, millions will say, "I always knew." Maybe that's the point. When the sky opens, it'll look just like the movies. What if Moses, Ezekiel, Noah, Mary weren't just holy figures, but early contactees? Some theorists believe those chosen by God were actually selected by aliens to guide humanity. Beings wrapped in light, delivering commands, changing history. Sounds like a UFO briefing, doesn't it? These figures may have had missions, aided by non-human intelligence. The flood, a planetary reset. The 10 Commandments, alien instruction. The Star of Bethlehem, a celestial GPS. Wild? Maybe. But the patterns repeat. If true, then the miracles were part of a greater plan. Social engineering from beyond Earth. Not faith versus science, but a fusion of both. And the next chosen one? They might be walking among us. Picture this. A massive light appears in the sky. People report healings. Strange messages are heard worldwide, and everyone calls it a miracle. But behind the scenes, it's an alien ship, cloaked in light, using advanced tech. Some believe this could be the next phase, contact masked as divine intervention. The line between miracle and contact is thin. People interpret through the lens they know. To avoid panic, aliens might show up as angels, or divine light. People wouldn't run, they'd kneel. And just like that, what we think is spiritual could be extraterrestrial diplomacy. The challenge is knowing the difference, or maybe accepting that they're one and the same. When the skies split open again, will it be God, or something older, watching us from the stars? Now tell me this, if UFOs have been here all along, if aliens have guided miracles from behind the scenes, will you keep ignoring the signs? Maybe what you call divine was always just something far more advanced, and we've been too afraid to admit it. Or worse, maybe we always knew, but chose to look away. If an entity appears from the sky tomorrow and claims to be divine, but clearly isn't human, what will your soul do? What will your faith say? Leave a comment. Do you believe miracles were caused by aliens? Or is there something even deeper going on? Subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because in the next video, the truth might be even stranger.